I thought my wife was cheating. Turns out we both had secrets. My wife spent 3 weeks acting like she was cheating on me. New perfume, locked phone. Girls' nights that ended at 1 a.m. And when I finally caught her, when I finally had proof in my hands, she looked at me and said, "It was a test. And you failed it before I even started." I need to get this out because I've been turning it over in my head every night for 3 months now, and I still don't fully know who the villain of this story is. Maybe there isn't one, maybe we both are, but you can be the judge. I'm Mark, 34. I live outside Columbus, Ohio, and up until May I thought I had a normal marriage. Not perfect, but solid. My wife, Claire, and I had been together 9 years, married 6. No kids yet. We'd been trying for about a year, quietly, the way you do when you don't want to jinx it by telling people. We had a routine. She managed operations for a regional healthcare staffing company. I was a project manager at a mid-sized engineering firm downtown. Mortgage, 2 cars, a dog named Biscuit. The kind of life that looks boring from the outside and feels safe from the inside. Then in April, things at my job changed. We got a new hire in project coordination, a woman named Ashley. Sharp, funny, easy to talk to. We started grabbing lunch together maybe once a week, then twice. Nothing physical ever happened. I want to be clear about that because it matters for what comes later. But I stopped mentioning her to Claire. Not because I was hiding an affair, because somewhere in the back of my head, I knew if I said, "I've been having lunch with a woman from work 3 times a week," it would sound like something. Even though I told myself it was nothing. I'm not proud of that. I'm telling you because I think it's the reason everything after it happened. In early May, Claire started acting different. She'd take her phone into the bathroom when it rang. She started going out on Thursday nights with the girls from the office, which she'd never really done before. Claire was more of a homebody, 2 nights out a month if that. She'd come home smelling like a perfume I didn't recognize, sweet and floral, nothing like the vanilla stuff she'd worn for years. She started sleeping with her phone face down on the nightstand, which she'd never done in 9 years together. I noticed. Of course I noticed. But here's the thing about guilt, it makes you quiet. I didn't confront her right away because some small, cowardly part of me thought, if I make a big deal about her behavior, she might ask about mine. So for the first week and a half, I just watched. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself marriages get quiet sometimes and it doesn't mean anything. By the second week, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. She started getting texts and smiling at her phone, then catching herself and putting it away. Once I heard her laughing in the kitchen, low, private laughing, the kind you don't do with your sister. When I walked in, she said it was just Priya being ridiculous and changed the subject fast. Priya was her best friend since college, so that checked out on the surface, but the tone was wrong. It sounded like she was covering for someone. Then I found the name. I wasn't snooping. Her phone buzzed on the counter while she was in the shower, and a text preview flashed up from a contact saved as D. Work. It said, "Same place, 7. Don't tell your husband I said that, lol. Don't tell your husband. About what? A dinner." I stood in my kitchen holding a dish towel like an idiot, staring at that message until the screen went dark. I want to walk you through what the next 2.5 weeks looked like, because this is where the story really starts to build, and honestly, living through it felt exactly like watching yourself lose your mind in slow motion. That Thursday, she said she was meeting the girls, and came home at 12:40 a.m. smelling like a bar, not perfume, an actual bar, that beer and fryer smell that clings to your clothes. I asked how it went. She said, "Fine, just Priya and a couple people from work." I asked which people. She said, "You don't know them," in a tone that closed the conversation like a door. I started keeping a mental log. I'm not proud of that either, but I did it. Thursday, out until after midnight. The following Tuesday, working late, home at 9:30, hair slightly damp like she'd just showered somewhere. A receipt I found balled up in her coat pocket, not planted. I checked every pocket like a lunatic. From a hotel bar downtown, 2 cocktails, timestamped 6:47 p.m. On a day she told me she was at a work training. I found a name in her contacts I didn't recognize, Daniel M., and a string of texts I only caught glimpses of, never full conversations because she was careful. Too careful. She started locking her phone with a passcode for the first time since we'd been together. When I asked why, she said, everyone should have a passcode, mark it's 2026, like I was the weird one for asking. I brought it to my brother, Josh, over beers one night, because I needed to say it out loud to someone or I was going to explode. I told him everything, the perfume, the hotel receipt, the D-work text, the passcode. Josh went quiet for a second and then said, "Man, I hate to say it, but that's a checklist." That's the whole checklist. He wasn't wrong, it hit every box. I didn't tell him about Ashley. I told myself that was different, that was work, that was nothing. But some ugly, honest part of me knew I was holding my own secret while asking him to help me investigate hers. I didn't examine that too closely at the time. I do now. By the third week, I'd stopped sleeping right. I'd lie next to Claire at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, replaying every excuse she'd given me, every late night, every locked phone, building a case in my head like a prosecutor. I started to resent her in a way that scared me, not loud resentment, but the quiet kind that sits in your chest and makes you cold to someone you used to reach for in your sleep. And then, on a Wednesday, I did something I'd never done in 9 years of being with her. I went into her laptop. She'd left it open on the kitchen table, logged into her email, while she ran out to grab something from her car. I told myself I was just going to close the lid. I didn't. I sat down. I opened her sent folder and typed Daniel into the search bar, my hands actually shaking, and what came up wasn't what I expected at all. It was a group email thread. Subject line, Operation Are We Okay? Recipients, Claire, Priya, and someone named Daniel Marsh, a co-worker of Priya's husband, apparently, who I'd never met. I read the whole thread standing in my own kitchen, with my heart slamming against my ribs. Claire had written to Priya 3.5 weeks earlier. I found a hotel key card in his jacket pocket from a Marriott downtown. He said it was from a work thing, but he's never once mentioned staying anywhere overnight for work. And he's been weird about his phone for a month. I don't want to accuse him of something and be wrong. I need to know if this is really happening before I blow up our whole marriage over a feeling. Priya had written back suggesting, and I want to be fair here because at the time reading it I did not feel like being fair that Claire test me. Act distant. Act like she had secrets of her own. See if I got defensive. See if I confessed to something first. See if guilt showed up on my face before she ever had to say a word. Priya even brought in Daniel, her husband's co-worker, purely as a prop, someone to be seen texting Claire, to give her cover for girls' nights that were really just Claire, Priya. And a bottle of wine at Priya's kitchen table, dissecting every text I sent and didn't send. The hotel receipt in her coat wasn't from a date. It was from a Tuesday night when she'd sat at that same hotel bar alone for 40 minutes, working up the nerve to just come home and confront me, and chickened out. The perfume was Priya's, borrowed, because Claire wanted me to notice something different about her and see how I'd react. And the hotel key card that started this whole thing, the one Claire had found in my jacket in April, I remembered it the second I read her words. It was from a Tuesday 2 months back when Ashley and 3 other coworkers from my project team had all stayed downtown after a client dinner ran late, an actual boring work thing. And I'd genuinely forgotten to mention it, because by the time I got home, Claire was asleep, and it hadn't seemed worth waking her up to explain. I never lied about it. I just never said it. And somewhere between not saying it and everything after, that silence had metastasized into something that looked, from the outside, exactly like guilt. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. Long enough that Claire came back in from the car, saw my face, saw her laptop open, and knew immediately what I'd read. Neither of us said anything for a solid 10 seconds. Then she said quietly, "How much did you see?" "Enough," I said. 3.5 weeks, Claire. You put on a whole production for 3.5 weeks. Because you've been distant since April and wouldn't tell me why, she said. And her voice cracked on, why, in a way that told me this had been eating her just as badly as it had been eating me. I found a hotel key card in your coat and you never said a word about it. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to ask me, I said. Like an adult, instead of enlisting your best friend and some guy I've never met to run a sting operation on your own husband. I didn't want to ask and have you lie to my face, she said. I wanted to see the truth without you having a chance to script it. That's when I told her about Ashley. All of it, the lunches, the texts, the reason I never mentioned her name. The fact that nothing physical had happened, but that I'd known, on some level, that what I was doing wasn't nothing either. I told her about the hotel key card and the actual boring explanation behind it. The one I should have just said out loud in April, instead of letting it sit in a jacket pocket for 2 months like evidence against myself. Claire didn't scream. That almost would have been easier. She just sat down across from me at our kitchen table, put her face in her hands, and said, "So we both had something to hide. We just hid it in different directions." I called Josh the next morning because I needed someone outside the house to tell me I wasn't the villain of this story, and he didn't. He said, straight up, "Bro, you let a woman think you might be cheating on her for 2 months because you didn't want to have one uncomfortable conversation about a coworker. That's not nothing." My mom, when I finally told her weeks later, said something similar, gentler but no less honest. Trust doesn't break in one big moment, Mark. It breaks in 100 small ones, and you both left 100 doors open. Claire's side wasn't spared either. Priya, when Claire told her I'd found the email thread, apparently said something like, "Well, he clearly had something to hide too, or he wouldn't have reacted like that," which, fair. But it didn't make the 3.5 weeks of staged distance hurt any less on my end. We tried for a while, 6 weeks of a marriage counselor named Dr. Ray's 45-minute sessions where we took turns explaining, in the calmest voices we could manage, exactly how betrayed we'd each felt by the other's silence. Claire said that even after she understood the truth about Ashley, she couldn't unfeel what those 3.5 weeks had done to her. She'd convinced herself some nights that she was already planning her exit, already rehearsing what she'd say to her mother. And I told her that even understanding why she did it, I couldn't shake the image of her and Priya at that kitchen table, laughing about a text preview she knew would break me a little. Treating my worst 2 weeks like a controlled experiment. We weren't lying to each other by the end. That's the strange part. We were painfully, exhaustively honest every session, every night at home. It just turned out that honesty, arriving 3 months too late, doesn't automatically repair what silence and staged evidence had already worn down. Ashley, for what it's worth, had no idea any of this involved her until I finally told her, awkwardly in the office break room, why I'd been distant for weeks. She looked genuinely stunned, told me she was engaged to someone from her hometown and had never once thought of our lunches as anything but friendly, and asked, not unkindly, why I'd never just told my wife we grabbed lunch. I didn't have a good answer for her either. Here's where things stand now, 3 months out. Claire and I are separated, not divorced, not yet, but living in separate apartments about 15 minutes apart, splitting time with Biscuit like he's a kid in a custody arrangement. Which honestly might be the saddest sentence I've written in this whole thing. We still talk. We're still, technically, in individual therapy, and we still love each other in the stubborn, worn-down way you love someone you built a life with. But neither of us has said the word divorce out loud yet, and neither of us has said, let's try again either. We're just suspended there. Last week she texted me to ask if I wanted to grab dinner, just to talk, no lawyers, no counselor. I said yes. We sat at a restaurant we used to go to for anniversaries and talked for 2 hours about nothing, Biscuit's new vet, her sister's baby shower, my mom's knee surgery, and it felt, for about 10 minutes in the middle of that dinner, like the old version of us. Then the check came and she said, I don't regret trying to find out the truth. I just regret how I went about it. And I said something back about wishing I'd just told her about the hotel key card the night it happened, and we both got quiet, and the 10 good minutes were over. I don't know if we're going to make it. I want to. I think she wants to some days. But I've learned something these last 3 months that I wish I'd known 9 years ago. A marriage doesn't usually break because of one big lie. It breaks because 2 people each decide, separately, that a small silence is easier than an uncomfortable truth. And by the time either of you notices, you're not lying to each other anymore. You're just 2 people standing in the wreckage of every conversation you were both too afraid to have. Update: 3 months after that dinner, a few people have asked what happened, so here it is. Claire and I filed for divorce last month. Amicable, no fighting over the house. We're selling it and splitting it down the middle. Biscuit stays with her. My new apartment doesn't allow big dogs, and honestly, he was always more her dog than mine. We had one more real conversation before the paperwork went in, sitting in her car outside the courthouse annex. She told me she didn't hate me, and I told her the same, and we both meant it, which felt worse somehow than if one of us hadn't. She said, I think we would have been fine if we just talked to each other like we talked to Priya and Josh instead. I think she's right. I think that's the whole story, honestly, not an affair, not a betrayal. Just two people who got better at confiding in everyone except each other. Until a hotel key card and a borrowed bottle of perfume did the talking for us. I'm doing okay, still in therapy. Still walking Biscuit on Saturdays when Claire drops him off for the day. The two of us sitting on the same porch steps we used to sit on together. Not quite strangers, not quite anything else either. I don't know what the lesson here is supposed to be, other than the obvious one. If you're keeping something small from the person you married because it's easier than the conversation, it's already too late. She just found out about mine before I found out about hers.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want more fascinating Reddit tales, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to Archives of Reddit. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.